Welcome to the final plenary session for the day, bringing experience to life, research, and education. My name is Renu Minhas, and it's my pleasure to moderate this session and to introduce our featured speaker. Dr. Anne-Marie Waudreau is a former medical practitioner and current lived experience postdoctoral fellow at the Center for Disability Research and Policy at the University of Sydney, Australia. In her final year of medical training, Anne-Marie was diagnosed with Usher syndrome. Anne-Marie went back to university to complete a master's in psychological medicine while being mother to a 4-week-old baby to enable her to work as a general practitioner therapist. As her degenerative condition worsened, Anne-Marie returned to university so that some of opportunities might come out of this adversity. Her PhD explored the hospital experiences of persons living with deafblindness. She revealed disturbing instances of abuse, neglect, dehumanization, and negative touch to be commonplace in these settings. Anne-Marie's current research includes the use of touch messaging, haptics in healthcare, disability and linguistics, challenging ableist qualitative methodologies, and older people with dual sensory impairment. After decades of writing case notes, referral letters, and management plans, Anne-Marie is about to complete a master's in creative writing, having written a text for health students on communication. With an emerging awarded playwright and producer, Isabella Luke, Anne-Marie has written a play based on the lived experience of people with sensory loss in hospital.
Oh gosh, thank you for that comprehensive. I don't need to write my autobiography anymore. Firstly, I'd like to make an acknowledgement of country. That I acknowledge the traditional owners of the Gadigal land on which this presentation was conceived and written, and where I live, work, write, and play. I would like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and future. And I stand too on the shoulders of other giants, those who have gone before me, especially those who took to the streets, occupied buildings, signed petitions, and harassed politicians, who said nothing about us without us, and putting lived experience in the fore. And in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and on to today, few of us would be here without their lived experiences fueling organisation of disability into the social consciousness and the legal fabric. And I also stand with my fantastic accessibility assistant, Suzanne, who's here with us today. And Susanna, I only employ people whose names start with S. And Susanna's at home in the southern hemisphere in winter, tucked up in bed, I hope. So without them, nothing's possible. I wouldn't be in Ottawa, I wouldn't have any slides, and I wouldn't have my clothes on properly and matching shoes. So today is about lived experience, and Walter this morning has thrown a figurative rope for emphasising how important lived experience is in research. And luckily it's figurative, otherwise I wouldn't be catching it. And it brings us to the question of, well, what is lived experience and why is it important to honour and respect? So lived experience refers to the people who have first-hand experiences of disability and its related challenges, legal, medical, social and personal. And this includes includes knowledge and experience and expertise about our own impairments, disability-related challenges and experiences of microaggression, discrimination, marginalisation, disadvantage and oppression. And what this means is that we are expert knowers and that we know the most about what it is like to experience disability. Lived experience research and lived experience-led research values and respects these storytelling insights. For any research about any aspects of our lives and our culture, our needs, our priorities, and the services that both support and fail us, we are the ones that are the most knowledgeable. It is not enough for researchers to observe us. They must ask and they must involve us. Researchers must engage and develop what British philosopher Miranda Fricker calls testimonial sensibility, which is where researchers immerse themselves into the worlds and lives and hear countless testimonies so as to become perceptually aware. And this creates challenges, though, of accessibility, of reach, of culture, of communication. And without attention to these challenges, whatever research or services or policies and protections are created and maintained, they won't be able to be inclusive, relevant, community orientated to community priorities or trustworthy. I would also like to say that despite having lived experience, we don't know it all. So testimonial sensibility and immersion is still necessary. We each hold but just slivers of the whole. Recently, I was approached to participate in research about COVID experiences of, and clever people had designed this wonderful survey. It was unreadable by screen readers. It contains loads of Likert scales and complicated graphics and, I'm told, very nice pictures. And I said to them, this is not accessible. And they said, whoops, we don't have the funding, so we're just going with it as it is. And so what this means is that the research canvasses only the experiences of those with enough sight and hearing to complete the survey online, who have devices, who have internet, and who can navigate the scales and fancy graphics, and who use written English proficiently. And it is effectively silenced and marginalised any other views and fails to represent the experiences of many, perhaps most, with deafblindness. Failure to seek, provide accessibility and include stories is a testimonial injustice. Had these researchers had lived experience on their research team, the testimonial injustice would have been avoided. Testimonial injustice is part of Fricker's framework on epistemic injustice, which are the wrongdoings of knowledge building. We deafblind are not seen and heard enough in society, stage, screen and stories in the same way as sighted hearing. For many, Helen Keller's the only deafblind star, and her story we know now has been much manipulated to fit a mould and a purpose for soliciting donations. And Australian society has yet to come to grips with the growing and significant numbers of older people with deafblindness, dual sensory impairment. Few are asking them about their stories and what they need, their priorities, and what support works works and what doesn't? And where is the society for older people who don't see too well and hear too good? I have taken dozens of lived experience testimonials and created a play as a way of increasing community and professional awareness of lived experiences of deafblindness in a situated, vulnerable state of going to hospital. And here is a snippet of Lucy's story before she has a fall and ends up needing surgery. She's played by an older actor with lived experience of sensory loss. There's transcripts, I think, available through the hub, and we hope... Is this going to work?
I've got it on.
It's working.
I think so. I think it's working.
So, how have you been, Lucy? We've missed you at church and your jam drop biscuits. Morning tea after Mass is not the same.
Oh, Father. It's been very difficult since Walter died, as you know. And then there's the COVID, and I'm so wobbly now. Bit scared to go outside in case I fall over. A lot scared, really. My Barry's in Perth, so he's not much use to me, you know, but... Well, his eldest, my granddaughter Natalie, well, she's going to move to Sydney to do a uni here. So I hope she visits.
And you're not seeing your old friends at all?
Oh, no, I'd rather not mix with people. It's too hard. And because they can't understand. I can't walk into a room. I see nothing, and I can't find my seat, and I don't recognise people. It's really hard to listen. No, it's not hard to listen, but to hear. I mean, I try to, you know, cope with it, but it just doesn't make much sense, really. None of it makes sense. I know it's just old age, but I'm finding it all difficult. I do feel bad when everyone invites me out to their houses, but I can't invite them back because it's really tricky trying to make a cup of tea. I'm scared I might scald myself, and I do burn myself when I'm cooking biscuits, so I've stopped all that cooking. And the bridge. Oh, I loved bridge. There weren't many that could beat Walter and I. But when I went on my own, I started offending people because they didn't know about the bad ears and eyes. You know, I look the same, I take it. And they forget. Everyone forgets. You might mention it, but they forget. Well, naturally. And the women that I've known at that club for years, well, I'd find that I wouldn't recognise them. I know what they're thinking. Oh, she's snobby now. But they all forget, you see. They've all forgotten that I'm unable to see them. So finally I just thought, oh, I'll give it away. But when you give it away, you lose contact. No, I stay away from people. I'm all right one-to-one, but I don't like going out anymore because I can't fit into the conversation. I'm not in it. I can't hear it.
That sounds sad and difficult.
Oh, no.
Would you like it if I sent some ladies over here? BYOK can thermoses.
Oh.
So you don't have to do a thing.
No, I don't want to be a bother.
Lucy, not a bother. Would you like it if I brought communion once a week? I do a round of regulars that can't get into church.
Oh, yes. Now that I'd like.
What this tells us is that Lucy doesn't know that she has dual sensory impairment or deafblindness. She just knows that life is lonely and difficult and risky. And this is not just a testimonial in justice of an unheard story, but it's also a hermeneutical injustice. Hermeneutical, for Roger out down there, hermeneutical is a big, not commonly used word for the lack of awareness of the name and meaning of an experience. And if you look it online and Google it, you'll find lots of really unhelpful gobbledygook about Bibles, scientific schools of thought, philosophical traditions, etc. But for Lucy here, she cannot communicate and name these experiences. No one's asking her, and she's not in a position to improve her circumstances. Miranda Fricker calls this slide a situated hermeneutical inequality. And this means Lucy's social situation as an older person is such that a collective hermeneutical gap or a profound lack of awareness prevents her and others like her from making sense of their living experiences. This hermeneutic lack of awareness is seen in the way older people refer to their significant sensory losses as just a normal part of getting old. These experiences are so common and yet so invisible. The failure to seek and make visible these lived experience stories of older age and sensory loss, these hermeneutic and testimonial injustice, belongs to society, its researchers, policymakers, social care providers and legislators. Lived experience needs to be seen, heard and felt. We will look later at how we can make lived experience more legible. But one thing here is that you could make the mistake that the social care people here said, Lucy needs more clubs, more hobbies and more places to go to help her social isolation. When in fact, if you ask Lucy, what does Lucy want? Lucy wants her old life back, her old networks, old bridge club and the church socials and the ladies that she knows and loves. So you can actually save money, time, energy by asking people what they want and what their priorities are. So I think lived experience is often better viewed as a living experience because for most of us, our lives with deafblindness are like permanent, often degenerative, and rarely temporary or a past event. And for all of us, living experience is not just of deafblindness, but of many layers, social, non-social, and medical. And for many, there may be insurmountable realities where no matter what the social change, support and accommodation, impairments and their effects remain to challenge the individual. And this makes disability a different form of difference. And this is why we need to assert ourselves and rise to be key informants, knowledge builders and leaders in research, practice and policy about us. We need to talk about our lives, our priorities, and this talk today is about that. My own experience, and I'm privileged to be a deafblind woman who has been to university, and I've always worked, as well as working on a job. I work to manage the ableist world, and not always successfully, I must say. For example, I should not do internet shopping. No matter how much accessibility software and Zoom I use, I still managed to order 21 kilograms of meat when I only wanted one. And I can tell you that doesn't fit into my fridge at home. I can do better than that. I also ordered 60 kilograms of apples when I only wanted 6. And crates and crates of apples lined our hallways. And I rang up Oz Harvest, which is an organisation that feeds the homeless, and they were enormously wonderful. They came straight away because I was just mortified and didn't want to tell my husband what I'd done. So they came straight away, collected it, and so only my children and I know about this. And if Tony's listening now, I've been outed as an internet shopping disaster. So that's my lived experience. Where am I up to?
Just go. No. Just 1 minute. You're here.
Right. So I have Usher syndrome, but as do quite a few other members of my family and this audience. But I don't just have Usher syndrome. I managed to get a whopping great retinal detachment in my good eye. So that was the end of that. Completely unrelated. Bad luck, I suppose. I had hearing loss as a child, and then a period of time, about 15 years of age, when I didn't know what was happening, but all of a sudden I couldn't play tennis. And the whole point about tennis is that you see the ball, you hit the ball, and you hit the ball into part of the court that the opposing player can't reach. Okay, well, I went from being the school champion 1 year to the following year, I couldn't win a game. So, and that was a really hard time. And again, now that we know the new hermeneutic word, that kind of explained what was happening to me then. I was in this sort of hermeneutic wasteland. And when I was in medical school, I had a friend who had a boyfriend who was the ophthalmology fellow, very handy. And I went to him and said, now listen, I know med students think there's something wrong with them all the time, but there really is something wrong with me. And he said, I agree. And this came after a decade of telling dozens of ophthalmologists that I kept falling over, couldn't see, fell off jetties, into water, all that sort of thing. So most ophthalmologists told me to eat more carrots and go and see a physiotherapist for clumsy people. So I got told I had Usher syndrome, and that was it. No information, no nothing, but the professor of ophthalmology said, I'm so excited. He said, can you come next week to the registrar's exam? And that was it. That was my education. So I went and looked at the medical library, obviously. I was into that. And got Vernon Mackay's 1969 article. Oh dear. Okay. So what that basically says is that if you've got Usher syndrome, what you can look forward to is psychosis, institutionalisation, and that was just terrible. And I didn't know then that all that data was based on the outcomes of people from past times. So that was a pretty terrible time. I decided to ignore Vernon Mackay because I thought if I ignore it, it won't happen to me. So my brother got diagnosed as a result of my diagnosis, and we had this conversation. We just said, yep, really rubbish. Let's pretend it's not there. Yep. He went and became a snake catcher, and he continued to catch snakes until he could no longer see, and a snake bit him. So we've had to do a lot of career adjustments. And one of the great problems that was starting to become apparent with this lack of professional awareness, and in Australia in particular, the lack of a unique and distinct disability status. And that's just really critical because you have, because we don't have it, you have a really stupid bureaucracy, such as with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. For those of you that don't know it, this is the scheme that for if you have a permanent disability and are under the age of 65, this will provide a plan and funding for support in a wide range from health and medical through to social participation and activities of daily living and assistive technology. So I hadn't really comprehended before this. This started in 2013, fully rolled out by 2019. So the NDIS is 10 years old this year. And I didn't realise how much money I was costing our family in support till we added it all up for the NDIS. So the NDIS has been really fabulous on many levels. Now going to show another film clip. This is Jacko, and it's played by, the main character is played by a deaf man who stepped in when our fabulous deaf-blind actor became ill. And Jacko will illustrate what happens when you don't have a unique and distinct disability status. Is that working?
Yes, I've got it on.
All right, Jacko, mate, let's get this application filled in. What's your prime disability?
Deafblindness. When I was in the army, there was an explosion.
No, your prime disability. So I've got a drop-down box here. We have to select something from the menu. So blindness or deafness only. Which is worse?
I couldn't say. I'm used to the blindness, but being deaf makes life difficult. Makes me slow to understanding. Can't use my eyes to help my hearing. I can't use my hearing to help figure out what's going on around me.
You'll have to pick one or the other.
Really can't. How about you pick for me?
That's not how the NDIS works. Our mantra is choices and control. You're in charge. You have the choices.
If I have to choose something that is accurate, without blindness, I've had it the longest.
Great choice, mate. Now, documentation. What medical certificates do you have to certify your condition?
I don't like going to the doctors, but this always happened there. So I don't have much in writing. Somewhere I have a letter from the hospital after the explosion. When I lost my eyes, but I can't see, so it'll be 20 years, easy.
That won't do it all. You're going to have to go see a GP or an eye doctor and get evidence, proper evidence that you have blindness. Unfortunately, we simply can't go off your word when handing over large sums for support. We need proof.
I can't go to the doctors. Wait, it triggers me. I panic. Then I have to get out there. Please, I need help to get there. I've got a bus fare. I don't like going to the bus because the driver always says, "You don't look disabled," when I show my pass. What does that even mean? I'd like to catch a taxi, but I need to be help to get there. I haven't got anybody. That's why I need the NDIS.
No. I'm sorry, Jacko. We simply can't help until we get the proper evidence.
With these two, and these.
So that really happened. We used verbatim testimony in all this. There's another example of a mother of a deafblind child. So the child has no eyes, and every year the mother has to go and get certified that the child's still blind. And the mother said to me, well, what do they think? Her eyes are going to go sometime soon? So, yes. Happily, things are getting better now. And in fact, my last NDIS plan, I was allowed to be deafblind. I didn't have to have either deafness or blindness. I could have both. So things are getting better. And that brings us to identity. With the lived experience of disability, how do we identify ourselves? And whilst in Australia, the media and the government are moving comprehensively to person-first identity, for example, person with deafblindness or a person living with dual sensory impairment, it is really interesting though that 60% of us who actually have disability prefer to use identity-first language, such as a deafblind person. I myself like identity first because, as I've told some people before, saying I'm a person living with deafblindness makes it sound like deafblindness is my flatmate. Flatmate that doesn't wash the dishes or clean the bathroom and lives in the next door room, and that somehow we're sort of together in the same house, but we're separate people. And the problem with deafblindness is that, for me, it's just always there. It's tied up in everything that you do. And I used to think, oh, the only time I'm not deafblind is when I'm asleep. But then I realised if the fire alarm goes off and I don't hear it and I die, then that's because of my deafblindness. So yeah, even when I'm asleep, I'm still deafblind. So, layers. So, collecting and listening to lived experience stories tells us that we don't just experience our disability as some sort of collective sameness that, you know, we all belong to this group, so we all have the same individual experiences. What we actually have are many, many layers, like the onion of Donkey in Shrek. And it's, you know, I can't embrace the social model alone as an explainer of my disability experience. Too many non-social layers. And I can't really completely ditch the medical model either, because I really love some parts of it. You know, ICU is really good when you need to be treated. Vaccinations are good to avoid getting other impairments from preventable infections. So I do like a lot about that. And I think that I'm a Rortyist. Richard Rorty is a philosopher who believes that rather than jamming disability into one theory, is to take the best out of all of the theories and layer them in a contingent approach. Isn't that great? So layers. Roles, part one. Roles, we occupy many roles as part of our layers. And I learned in my PhD, I studied my PhD thinking, right, I'm going to study the hospital experience of my participants. And yeah, they told me all these totally horrific stories about what happened to them. But then they went, hey, I go to hospital for other things. I visit people in a hospital. I'm a parent, a spouse, a carer, and I go to hospital in that context as well. I'm part of a research program based at the hospital. I used to be a healthcare worker, or I am a healthcare worker, or I'm a volunteer at the hospital. And two of my participants were involved in teaching students about communication at a hospital. So we have layers, because we do lots of things. And layers like other layers. So another benefit of lived experience-led research is that people trust you and tell you more. So I was told not just stories about hospitals, but I was about problems getting services, fears about growing older, terrible times in residential aged care, desperately seeking jobs and getting none, being bullied at school, deafy dummy, on trains and buses, you don't look disabled, in workplaces, in shops, and in banks and queues. Are you deaf or something? And then on dates, are you drunk already? The lack of affordable housing was a really big one. Being in group homes and aged care or in the community without a communication partner, and being lonely and forgotten. And all of this tells us where the future research, policy and support provision is needed. And harnessing the insights of those with lived experience means that we can prioritise our research, policy and practice in alignment with what the community needs and values. More layers. So we live with deafblindness, but that's obviously not all we do. We are enormously capable, and we would be more productive if society were better organised. We can be carers, parents, we can be parents with deafblindness, we can be parents of, we can be adult children of a parent with dual sensory impairment, and we look after people as well as being looked after. I have 3 parents and parents-in-law still living, and how weird is it? They all have dual sensory impairment. Perhaps it's because we recognise it. And it's an almost full-time job teaching all the various aged care providers about dual sensory impairment, about communication, about helping one parent with hearing aids and changing the batteries every Monday. I told the staff to pretend it was a life-giving heart drug, and every Monday she needed to have it. So it was very difficult. I'm a parent as well, and it will come as no surprise that that can be an interesting, somewhat anxiety tricky thing. And I wished when I had the children that I'd had some support from people who knew what it was like. But I did have one cluey child, and who, after I'd fallen down the stairs when he was chatting to me, he came to me and said, "Rightio, Mummy, this has got to stop. I've developed a system. I'm going to go flat, flat, flat on your hand when it's flat, and tap, tap, tap when it's a few steps, and tap, 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 tap when it's a lot of steps, and then I'm going to hold your hand tightly when I want you to stop, Mummy." He was 10 years old. So that's the system. That was the beginning of my transition, I suppose, into tactile messaging. And now I need some non-tactile messaging as to where the hell I'm up to.
Hang on that row.
Okay, so the beginning of this relationship with touch messaging, and that journey informed my research and my work with other people with deafblindness. And these experiences illustrate that parenting is a lovely reciprocal business where we're all giving and taking. And that's important to remember, because too often in social care, people make negative judgments about how people with deafblindness can parent, and it's give and take. So yeah. Okay, we can be cared for. Living with deafblindness means being dependent upon the care and kindness and skills of other people. I'm lucky I have a partner who's incredibly supportive, but, you know, we have our moments, and I'm incredibly difficult to live with. So I try to actually remember that and just, you know, be a nice person. But we've discovered too that the communication tension is enormous, particularly first thing in the morning when, you know, my husband's very kind, you know, might come in and say, do you want a cup of tea? And I go, what? And he goes, do you want a cup of tea? And I go, what? So it's a bad start to the morning. Now we just do tea, the Auslan manual alphabet for tea, and that means that we start the morning beautifully, me with my cup of tea, and my cups of tea are very important. So having lived this scenario and heard from lots of other people, these insights and communication measures that might be helpful. Professionals and practitioners may look and say, hearing aids will fix that, or a cochlear implant will do wonders, but these do not remove all of the consequences of hearing loss for all of the people. And sometimes the people telling you these things don't have the intimate knowledge that the person with lived experience has. And it is actually really rare to be asked, you know, how are you finding your hearing aids? I mean, the answer the provider wants to hear is great. So it's really important that we ask people, and I'm lucky my current audiologist, who's been with me through the last 2 or 3 degrees, has been incredibly creative, proactive, finding equipment and assistive technology and funding for these so that we can go to uni and participate. We are also service users. I've been a service user for a very long time. And particularly as the vision loss got greater, and, you know, needed more and more human and technological assistance. So that means that, you know, I have a big involvement with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. But it's been both wonderful and a disabling barrier. So firstly, it got some big things happening, like the bathroom modification. And here I have to thank Deaf Blind Ontario. At the 2019 World Conference, the 2 lovely presenters talked about a book, an online book that they'd written with lived experience and professional experience, and it was about home modification, and my occupational therapist had no idea. And so this was fantastic because in it says, because I was fighting against having the disability standard white bathroom with silver grab rails. And I said, I can't see them, it hurts my eyes, I can't live in a bathroom like that. So, and this lovely presenter said, you get the colour wheel, you fold it in half, you pick one colour on one side and one on the other. And so I did that and was able to justify having a pink tile and black everything else. So lots of contrast. And so I'd like to repay the favour and give a book to Deaf Blind Ontario, because that was amazing. At the disabling barrier, there are profoundly low expectations. So my planner before the current one said, righto, Emery, now how about we give you somebody to help you shower, take you for a walk, and a little bit of social chit-chat. Wouldn't that be nice? And would you like me to enrol you in daycare or a club with people like yourself? And I said, well, I go to university, and I thought that was daycare for people like myself. And so the expectations of what I was to achieve was like really low.
Keep going.
So that's been, I think, a profound disabling barrier.
Lifelong.
Okay. Shit, where am I?
Hang on, stop.
I've lost my spot again.
We're just finding it. Right, hang on. About here.
Where?
Okay.
Put your finger on it.
I'll put your finger on it.
Oh, right, okay. This is exciting. Oh, yeah, that's just all boring.
Okay, so stop.
No. It's all right. So disability is big business in Australia. It's worth $34 billion and it's growing. But the problem is that we've got this workforce that is casualised, disordered, and the market force favours unskilled, lower paid workers, and for service providers and workers that support people with complex communication and other needs, and especially multiple disability and intersectionality, the current market model just isn't working. And I can say this from lived experience, and my participants say this from lived experience. So, and this lived experience at last is being listened to because the NDIS is currently under a major review. I'm contributing that. So that makes me a service provider as well. So, my lived experience is able to be used for lots of things. I'm on, lots about accessibility and providing advice on health and postgraduate, student advisory support, writing reports for patients who are trying to get onto the NDIS. So there's some. And I'm on committee, so I've been on the Ministry of Health committee for the COVID pandemic I think I started there in April after the pandemic was declared in March in Australia. And so it's been a very interesting thing seeing how the lack of lived experience at the top during a disaster meant that there was marginalisation of people with disability during the pandemic. Unwanted experiences. Disability is full of the lived experience of unwanted experiences, and they're everywhere, particularly the one about you don't look disabled. And so I keep saying to myself, one day I'm going to say to someone, oh, so I should stagger about, perhaps? Would that make me look disabled? What do you want me to do? So I think that's really important in the things when we have dealings with people with disability, and if they say, oh, I've got a problem at work or I've experienced this at school, it's important to remember that experience comes on top of all the other thick, sticky, messy layers, and that actually changes the experience, what looks to outsiders as being perhaps a small kind of, thing that you just have to toughen up and accept, can actually be quite major when it's layered on top of many, many other microaggressions and discrimination. So, I think, and normalising, I spent a long time, working hard to be normal and saying to myself, work harder, work harder, work harder. And that eventually I just couldn't do it. And, and even now, people send emails all the time saying, where's the PowerPoint, where are the links, where's the article, where's the proof copy, where's the document, where's this, where's that? When I'm working really hard. I have part-time assistants, so sometimes people would just understand it's a complicated business. So all these layers, as I said, thick, sticky, and invisible often, and you need to be asked about in safe ways, because sharing these experiences with researchers researchers need to have what I mentioned at the beginning, were the testimonial sensibilities or lived experience. So another role that I inhabit is lived experience researcher, and that's brought me here, among other places. My researcher confirms how pervasive care and communication failures are in hospital. And if you look at the slide, this is basically a report card on what healthcare, hospital experiences are like for people with dual sensory impairments. So I'm cared about 11%. I'm treated as a human being 17%. I understand what professionals say is 11%, which means 89% don't understand. I experience high quality and safe clinical care, 22%. Next slide. I have confidence in the professionals treating me, 22%. I am treated equally no matter who I am, 22%. My hospital puts the needs of patients first, 6%. And my feedback is welcome and acted upon, 6%. So we've got another brief film clip. And again, this is lived experience of Genevieve. And the actress playing Genevieve has multiple disabilities, including sensory loss.
Yeah, I've just been snowed under. But I'll get those dispatch summaries sent out by the end of today. Oh, I didn't realise I was so far behind. Whoops. Oh well. All right, I'll do that. Bye. Right, I'm one of the doctors here and I'm here to get some information from you.
What? Why are you here?
I'm one of the doctors that's looking after you and I'm here to get some information from you.
I'm blind and I'm also hearing impaired. I would like to use an interpreter.
It's a little bit late for that. We might have to muddle through.
Speak slowly and clearly.
Right. So, what brought you here today?
An ambulance? Look, my family have gone now. They knew I'd be waiting a while for a doctor and they were going to help interpret. I don't have my braille machine here. I would like to use a braille machine.
Yeah, sorry, I was busy with other patients. But you've got your hearing aids, you should be all right. So tell me, what happened?
Well, I was walking with my guide dog. I had tight chest pains and then my ankle looked funny.
Right, have you had a history of impairment problem before?
It's all there in the notes.
Oh. Sorry, I'm gonna take this. Okay, yeah. If he's vomiting, that's no good for his diabetes. Let's have a phone order for 8 milligrams of ondansetron taken orally for Robert. That's 8 milligrams of ondansetron oral wafer for Robert. I'll be down there soon to write it up. Yep. Call me if the vomiting continues. Okay, wait, where were we? The funny chest, fall over, heart issues. Okay, have you ever had operated before?
What was that?
Have you ever been operated on before?
You mean have I been operated on before?
Yes.
Yes, I've had a heart operation. It's all there in the notes.
Okay, but we just need to go over these things again. It's really important that we're thorough. Oh, sorry about this. Hello? Yep, Lucy, Nightingale Ward. You dehydrated? Ah, okay. Yep, she need a drip? Yep, okay, I'll be down to put one in soon. Right, heart disease, operations. Oh, are you allergic to any medication?
Sorry, what was that?
Are you allergic to any medication?
Oh, allergies. Yes, iodine. Makes me vomit and I get bad rashes.
Okay. Yep. Aggressive patient in emergency. All right, I'll be right down. Is there anything else I need to know here?
Yes, I was given antibiotics as a child, and I have profound hearing loss.
Yep. Okay, I'll be right down. I'll come and do this again later. Coming.
So the irony of that excerpt is that Genevieve will eventually be sent to a residential aged care facility because there were no beds available in a rehabilitation hospital. And that the doctor says, don't worry, we've sent really thorough notes across with you. And as you can see from that, they haven't gotten thorough notes at all. So I'd like to kind of end on sort of a bit of a roadmap for including lived experience in protections, research, policy and practice. Last slide. So recognising deaf-blind dual sensory impairment as distinct disability would be helpful for Australia anyway. Co-production. All research about disability, including people with disability at all stages of the research process. One thing here too is a lot of articles recently, particularly talking about lived experience, talk about our involvement in research, never mention that you can be academics, that you can be leaders of the research. A lot of the material published is all about how lived experience is really nice in the other layers of the research. Thirdly, accessibility for everybody, and that includes the team, the research team and the participants. And make grant applications accessible, please. Like, there's 80 pages of some of them. And it's a lot to dictate 80 pages. Meeting etiquette. We all know that all research and policy making involves interminable, long meetings, lots and lots and lots and lots of them. So meeting etiquette makes it easier for people to be included and participate. Remuneration. Pay for the expert knowledge of people with disability for projects and consultations and advice. Authorship. Include the knowledge builders as authors where possible. Grow experience. Provide opportunities for people with lived experience to tell their stories, participate in the production of research, and get them involved and build up their skills. It's an incredibly rich, rewarding thing to do. Budget for the increased time and the accessibility provisions. And then talk about the challenges and adjustments to methodologies when conducting research by lived experience researchers, and with people with disabilities. So, like, telling the story of the story, that what were the challenges that you met and how did you meet them, how did you include people, and I think that's really important. That's one of my little tiny bugbears about qualitative methodologies, is making them accessible and inclusive. Okay.
Is that it?
I'm done.
She's done.
I'm done. Okay. No time for questions. Can we leave?
Yes, there is. There's questions.
Okay.
There are questions, I believe.
What is the device you're using right now for accessibility, and how long did it take you to gain proficiency with it?
Then you need to repeat that.
I'll repeat it for you. Just a minute. What is the device you are using at the moment? And can you repeat the rest of your question?
How long did it take to gain such proficiency with it?
And how long did it take to gain such proficiency with the device you use?
This, the iPad.
Yes.
Oh, okay. What we use on this is we're using AI Otter We've had a lot of trouble with speech to text. I need to have it dark moded, large print. Oh, that's the other thing I keep leaving out. Friendly fonts, everybody. Need to ditch Times New Roman. It gets all blurred around the edges. So we use Otter AI, we use, and that's been amazing, but we also use a Google Doc. So if I'm at a meeting, people will live transcribe into a Google Doc, and if I'm not physically able to be there, then I can still contribute through the Google Doc because I can type into the Google Doc. It just means the meeting, people holding the meeting have to be aware my response will come later, and sometimes due to the time lag, I might actually repeat something that somebody else has already said, or have completely missed the discussion completely. They've moved on to something else. But generally speaking, with nice, kind, tolerant people on the other side, it works really well. But yeah, no, we've been trialling lots of different methods, and Otter AI has been great because it can tell the difference between different speakers. And so we've found that really, this is really the first big meeting that we've brought the Otter to, and we really like it.
It sounds like we have a pet otter.
Cool. Well, we do, it's just virtual.
Well, thank you so much for your question, and thank you, Anne-Marie, for sharing your experiences and all the testimonies of the stories that we saw. I would like to use a quote by Josh Stern, who said, if you can laugh in the face of adversity, you can outrun it too. And you are a real true testimony to that quote. Thank you so much for sharing and talking about Deafblind Ontario Services, where I come from. That was a really great honor to hear that, our organization's name that you've used. Thank you again, and please accept this small token of gift for your appreciation for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. You better get the book. You better give me the book. Yes, you better give it to me.
I've given it to
And now I will turn the mic over to our MC, Kevin Frost, to wrap up the day. Thank you.
There you go. Yep. Thank you, Renu. This concludes our educational sessions for the day. However, the Group D posters will be presented once again in the foyer for the next 45 minutes. If you are taking part in one of the network's meetings scheduled this evening, they will be held in the second floor meeting room starting at 5:30. Deafblind Education Network in room 203, Acquired Deafblindness Network meeting in room 205, Ushers Network in room 206, Research Network meeting in room 207, Deafblind African Network meeting in room 208, Creative Arts Network meeting in Canada 2. Tonight, we hope you will join us for the movie night, Advocacy Club Screening, a documentary from the world's first deafblind film director who created an accessible experience featuring advocates from within the deafblind community. Movie night is generously sponsored by CHKC and will start at 7 p.m. There will be a cash bar and lots of popcorn. Woohoo! See you tonight. We will kick off our day tomorrow with breakfast starting at 7:30 a.m. and followed by another not-to-miss plenary session, My Life with Usher Syndrome, presented by Bella and Mark Dunning. The session will start at 8:30. Have a great evening, and thank you for your participation today. In closing, I'd like to share a true service guide dog story. So a husband and wife are walking into the drugstore, and the husband has a service guide dog, and she said, "Honey, I'm gonna go get some water at the back of the store for you." So she wanders off, and he's standing with his dog, and he comes back, and she's just laughing and laughing, and he said, "We need to do this more often. I don't think you realize, but somebody dropped a $20 bill in your dog bowl." And just so you know, I've signed over 100 books today. Please help yourself at the Deafblind Champion book. It's been a great experience doing it, and you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. God bless.